Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a really detailed breakdown for beginners digitally drawing on Photoshop. I find that I've taught myself through YouTube, and even though it's been really helpful, there is some films that use clipping masks and shortcuts, and it makes it a bit complicated to follow. So this is literally going to be a very simplified demo of how to digitally draw and colour on Photoshop. So what I started off with just then was I opened Photoshop, I clicked File, New, and then I selected how many pixels I wanted. This is going to determine the shape of your canvas, whether you want it to be portrait, landscape or square. I've just done 2000 by 2000 pixels because it means that the resolution will be high and it's just a nice squared off canvas to start your drawing on. Next, I have literally just dragged a photo from my desktop into Adobe Photoshop, and it just clips in like a magnet. So when you drag it in, you can change the shape, you can stretch it out, you can rotate it by dragging on the corners, and then when you're done you click the tick. If your workspace doesn't really look familiar or useful and you don't really know what you need to select, go to the Windows tab, go to Workspace and click on one of the layouts that you'd like. So there's a painting one, photography one. Other than that, what I like to do is just delete everything, have it really clear, and then as you go you will select what you need from the Windows tab. You'll realise that to begin with you'll need layers, and then you'll need brushes, and so on. I can't really tell you what windows you'll need because everyone's different, but I realised that it's just something that I learned as I went as to what I needed on my workspace. So I'm clicking on the layer, which is the base layer, because if you have like a white background underneath you can just unlock that and delete that. But I'm changing the opacity of the photograph so that when it comes to drawing over it, I see my drawing more clearer than the photograph. So this photograph is a picture of a drawing that I've already done. So a top tip I would say would be to draw by hand what you want to digitally draw, and then draw digitally over the top as a reference, because it will make it far easier and it is all still your artwork. So what I did just then was I clicked the little square which created a new layer, and this is what we want to draw on. We don't want to draw on the photograph layer because then when you go to erase things you will erase the photograph as well. You want them to be very separate. It's like tracing paper, you want to be able to remove the two at the end. So now I'm just showing the brush options. So the brush tool is the little icon to the left. It looks like a little paintbrush and the shortcut is B. You can go to brush settings and you can change the properties accordingly on how you would like your brush to be. You can customize it. For this example, I literally just use Kyle's Ultimate Pastel Palooza because I think if you're starting off, if you go for a rougher textured brush, then there's less pressure to get the lines perfectly smooth because you're going for more of a rustic appearance, which is why drawing the gorillas is perfect because their animation is quite quirky. So what we're doing is we're tapping the magnifying glass at the bottom and we are zooming in so that we can basically draw detail a lot easier. So a hack that I've got for these perfectly round eyes is to go to a hard round brush, to make the diameter of the brush as big as what the eye sockets are, and then to literally just tap and it inks in a perfectly round circular eye. So then we're going to go back to our chunky pastel brush for the line art. So it depends how big your canvas is and how big you want your drawing to be, how zoomed in you are, how thick you want the lines. But typically an outline of a drawing like this one is going to be between 10 and 30 on the size of the brush. So I've gone for 17. And the key here, and the moment that I realised this, it was an absolute game changer. I thought there was some special tool or shortcut that made your lines straight automatically. But if you want your lines to be straight just by hand, the answer to this is literally practice. You zoom all the way in, and for instance when I'm drawing his face shape here, I'm not drawing the entire face shape because that would come out wobbly each time you have to change direction. I am drawing every line as I see it, and so obviously we've got this crisscross as they intersect, but then we take a rubber and we literally rub out all the scruffy lines to leave us with what looks like a very perfect geometric chin. So we carry on doing this for the rest of the piece. What I'm basically doing is it would take you a lot of attempts to get it right. So one shortcut that I will introduce today is on a Mac, it's Alt Command Z. Just Command Z will only undo the first action that you do, but Alt Command Z will undo as many back as you want. So I'm going to talk a little bit about opacity, flow and smoothing, which is in the top bar, and they are properties of the brush settings. So flow is basically, the easiest way to explain it is if you're in real life, it's how much you load your paintbrush with paint. So if you dial the flow all the way down to say 20%, your lines are going to appear thinner and weaker because they're literally running out of paint. Whereas if you dial the opacity down, you start to see through the colour or the line. So the colour does not change, but it does pastelize and get lighter and basically become less saturated. This can be more helpful for shading, as I'll show later. And the smoothing is basically how fast the line follows after your pen hits the tablet. So if your smoothing is on 0%, it's going to be very immediate and it's going to be right behind your brush or on your brush. But if you make the smoothing 90%, then you're going to have a lag, which basically can be good for line work because it gives you more time to decide where you want to take your lines, and it basically makes the overall line appear a bit neater. So when you think you've finished your line work, you can remove the photograph layer and you can see just how it looks, and you can check that you like the look of it and change it. If you don't, add lines in, take lines out. So now we're on to colouring. So what we want to do with colouring is you want to click that little square again to make a new layer. We don't want to do it on our line art layer because if you make a mistake or want to erase some of the colour, you're going to erase the line with it, which is just terrible. So you make a new layer for colour and you put this layer underneath the line art layer so that when you come to colouring, you can colour all around the lines and it won't cover them up, it will go underneath, which makes it far easier, especially if you want to hand colour like how I'm doing now. So my number one top tip with colouring, and I can't believe it took me so long to discover this, but you use eyedrop tool, which is basically the colour picker. So I always thought that you had to keep swatches, and whatever colours you use, you had to document in your swatch table, and then you would not get mixed up and use different colours and different shades in the same kind of pigment. But it's so much easier than that. I literally don't look at swatches once. I don't know if that's how other artists do it, but I don't. I use the eyedrop tool, which is to your left bar there. It looks like a little eyedrop. What I did with the t-shirt, I took the colour picker tool and I took just some shades darker, and I just went darker and darker each time. What I also like to do to create shadow is to change the opacity. This is a bit more difficult because you have to keep your pen on the tablet. If you take your pen off, then when you go over the colour again, it's going to be thicker a second time because you're layering up the opacity, so you can get uneven brushstroke colour. But if you, like how I'm doing on the upper lip here, if you just keep your brush on the canvas and you colour as much as you want for the first layer, and then you colour a little less for the second, until you're literally just drawing one line on the right for the darkest part, and that is all the same colour and all the same opacity, but you're just layering up what is a lower opacity, if you get what I mean. But if you find this tricky, just do 100% opacity and just pick a darker colour and then a more darker colour each time. So to check halfway through how your picture's looking symmetrically wise, you can click on image and then image rotation, flip horizontal, and you can see how it looks. I think if you're going for a symmetrical kind of realistic portrait, then you want it to look just as good flipped as it does originally. So as you can see, this was a bit wonky, so I just readjusted his chin because you can tell that it dropped a bit far, but otherwise I'm okay with the rest of the wonkiness because, like I say, it's quite quirky animation. When I wanted to rub out the chin, I clicked on the outline layer so that I was just rubbing out the line art, and then I was filling back in using the colour picker with the original skin tone colour, and then just drawing some Gorilla's font at the bottom and removing the underneath layer so that we can see what it looks like just by itself, and there we are, it's all done. There's a finished beginner's drawing of 2D from Gorillas. I really hope that it helped. I hope that you could follow along at home and that you have a drawing right now that you're impressed with as well. Do comment any questions below and I will try my best to answer them. But yeah, thank you for watching this tutorial and come back next week for a different one.